Well, good afternoon to the throngs of people who have gathered together in their mansions and in their hovels to look at and listen to our wise words. Pat McGart, how are you today? You're looking a little bit like a shadowy figure there, you know.
There's not a lot I can do about it. It's got very dark outside. In fact, what's that word? Preternaturally dark.
Did
It's snowing.
did
It's
you see
snowing
that?
at the door.
Did you see that? Mentioning shadowy figures, did you see the headline in Irish News?
No,
You know that guy Ted Howell who died recently.
yeah. In fact, our mutual friend Ray Bassett sent me a thing about him. Yeah,
That's right. I was reading it. I thought it was very good. But there's a photograph of him and Jerry Adams walking along, and the Irish uses the headline "shadowy figure." That was very involved in the negotiations or whatever. But uh, Danny Morrison put out on Twitter, and he was furious. He was saying, it's so shadowy, like that. There's a public picture of him walking along, chatting in a public place, obviously, chatting to Jerry Adams. That sort of thing really annoys me too. I just
well, you see, I think that was a point. Well, Ray Bassett, who's a former Irish ambassador to Australia, but he was in charge of the senior figure at the and Merrifield. He did a thing about Ted Hoyle the last day, and
hmm,
he said he was a very civilized, sort of decent sort of man
yeah,
who was reasonable and all the rest of it. Now I keep referring to this. It's a favorite ploy of the Irish Times and the Irish Independent and people like that to refer to people in the background in Sinn Féin as shadowy figures. And I always remember Tommy Gorman, the late Tommy Gorman, RT's Northern Editor. He says, "Look, wait a minute, well, the people sort of basically stopped doing this." He says, "They're not shadowy figures." He says, "They're up in Stormont every day." He says, "They're well known to journalists. They're not shadowy." So he says,
yes.
"This sort of rubbish that they're." No, is Martin O'Muller a shadowy figure because he was an advisor or somebody like that?
But Pat, you see, the thing is, it's not whether or not that it's true; it's how often they say it, and they keep on
Yeah.
saying it. I'll bet you what you like. More people are aware of this notion of shadowy figures pulling Sinn Féin's strings than are aware of what Tommy Gorman said, that there was no such thing as
Mm.
shadowy figures at all, that they were just
Yeah.
openly
Yeah.
advisors.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Well, that's true, but Jude, it's the old one, and I'm not here, Jude, I'm not the PR for Sinn Féin, but I think that's been overplayed for way, way too long. Jude,
Yeah,
anybody that gives advice to Sinn Féin, particularly if they're had a previous track record in Republican, is considered a shadowy figure.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
know a couple of guys in Derry, who were called shadowy figures. They were far from shadowy.
yeah,
Everybody knew who they were, and they
yeah,
had an opinion the same as everybody else.
yeah.
And I presume sometimes they were listened to and sometimes they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, if they have expertise, I mean, every party uses figures that mightn't be elected figures, but I mean,
Yeah.
I forgot what the guy's name was now. I think he was a Fianna Fáil senior figure, maybe Fine Gael, but he was an advisor to them for years and years and years, and provided all sorts of ideas for them. So you could describe him as a shadowy figure if you want to. What they really mean, of course, is it's guys with guns in the shadows. That's what they mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, well, leave that nonsense. Let's talk about somebody who's really, really rich. Pat, can you imagine being
Yeah.
really rich? Really, really,
Yeah. I can never
really
get that far
rich.
myself.
Like 400 and what was it, $30 billion?
Billion now. It's got up to about something like 430 billion now. Imagine.
It's hard to
Jesus
even think
Christ.
of him. And he's got all
Yeah.
annoyed. He had we thought he was the best pals with Nigel Farage, and Farage was going over to America every whip around. So what has
Yeah.
happened?
Hey, Farage is suggesting that Stephen actually, what's it, Lennon, better known to you and me as Tommy Robinson.
Yeah,
He's a far right, and I mean far right guy, but he's claiming the white guy's getting a rough deal and all the rest of it, and so on, and these black guys are getting all the rest of it. And he was done for contempt of court. He made allegations against a Syrian man, which were totally untrue, by the way, totally, completely, and utterly untrue, and was warned by a court not to repeat them. He repeated them, and then buggered off somewhere and out of the country, couldn't be found for a while. But when he came back, he was arrested and imprisoned for contempt of court. apparently, for some reason, Elon Musk. Now, keep in mind, Jude, this guy is South African, white South African. Let's
That's
get
right.
that clear, because I think this that has a part to play in all this. He thinks that reform, Nigel Farage's party should not only take that they should be standing up for Tommy Robinson or Stephen Yaxley Lennon and getting him out of jail, but they should also welcome him into the party as some sort of senior figure. And I thought it was rather good. Nigel Farage says he will not take anybody of that sort of extremist from the British National Party into his party. He says that is extremism, as racism. He says what they stand up for England, not for racism, and so on
Oh,
and sort of thing.
that was
And
a
he says,
decent statement to make.
aye. So he says if that means that they lose a big donation from Elon Musk, so be it.
But what is Musk playing at? Because he's attacking Nigel. He says Nigel's not. They should get another leader for Reform
Yeah,
UK. And he's saying that Starmer. He says Starmer was complicit in the rape of Britain when he was head of Crown prosecution for 6 years.
yeah.
Starmer must go, and he must face charges for his complicity in the worst mass crime in the history of Britain. That sounds suspiciously like Donald Trump, doesn't it? Those that kind of language.
Another thing as well, he's Jess Phillips. What is she? She's a senior person, and she's the deputy prime minister. He accused her of being an
Yeah.
apologist for genocide rape or genocidal rape. I can't remember exact words were. And Starmer, I don't normally agree with Starmer, and he says the poison of the far right, he says, is actually starting to seep into Britain, and he
Right.
says it's threatening people like the democracy and people like Jess Phillips. But here's the other thing: I think it was in the Daily Mail today, or maybe the Daily Express. Some well, Kemi Badenoch is basically backing up a lot of what Musk is saying. Jude, the Tory party seem to be playing this game, a very dangerous game. They're shifting further and further to the right. By the way, our friend Musk as well. He's, that party in Germany, Alternative for Germany, which is a far right.
Mhm.
It's a Nazi
Yeah.
party. He's backing them as well, and he's had to go with Olaf Schultz, the German prime or chancellor, as well. So this
But
guy is backing people who are basically Nazis.
but can you not see the point with Kemi Badenoch? I mean, of course, she's going to be critical or join the criticism of Reform UK because that's a big threat to her. I mean,
Yeah,
what Nigel Farage was saying, or somebody was saying about him at their big meeting, was imagine Nigel Farage is Prime Minister in number 10. In other words, they have
yeah.
ambitions to become the next big party and to eclipse the Conservatives, who are not in very good shape at the moment. So you can see why
No,
Kevin McMahon could weigh in there. But
yeah,
I wonder what's in it for Musk. You can see what's in it for
yeah,
Musk when he pals up with Trump, because Trump will
yeah,
pass laws that'll get loads of money and save him billions on taxes, or he'll
yeah.
set up policies that'll feed into his way of working. What is in it for him in
I don't know, Jude.
criticism of
Like
Starmer?
he's got 200. He's got 210 million followers on X. He's. I think he's actually a danger to democracy because
Um,
I think, like a lot of people, he's become a megalomaniac. He thinks the only person's views that counts. He's because he's, as you said earlier, he is 430 billion or something at this stage. That the rules don't apply. That he's some sort of the master of the universe and so on. And he seems to have taken an interest in world sort of politics and so on. That what he says, he's now a world leader type thing.
Yeah, but why the change pact? He was a well. First of all, he was sticking his nose into British politics, which seems odd because, as far as America is concerned, Britain is a little sort of pimple off the coast of Europe.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
he was showing an interest in support for Reform UK and Nigel, and now he's the
yeah,
opposite, and he's going
yeah.
after Starmer like nobody's business. Why? There must be some reason for that. I mean, he's not just
Judith, yeah, I think Starmer's. By the way, he says Starmer should be in prison for for his
yeah,
activities, and that the U.S. should free Britain from his whatever it is, his rule. The
yeah.
U.S. should, it's insane, Jude. But here's the thing, Jude.
Oh,
These
why?
guys are in the ascendancy right across,
They are.
like because he controls a like Twitter is global. there are no rules and regulations really to regulate it, they have untrammeled power in a way that newspapers never had, because newspapers were in each place and they could be sued. Try
Mm.
suing somebody who's got 430 billion. Sure, if you even if he gets 30 or 50,000 pound damages, it's a drop in the ocean. He earns that in about a second.
That's right. But I still come back to the question, Pat. Why is he doing it? All right, he's capable of doing it, obviously. But why? What's in it for him?
I
Or is he
presume
just
Judy has been.
crazy?
I think he's got this absolutely fascist mentality, and that's that he's. Dude, a lot of these guys saying that they're patriots and we want to go back to the old ways, traditional ways. Dude, the traditional ways meant were sort of like what would you say, nearly like a feudal system. No unions, no
Yeah,
rights, no nothing,
yeah.
and you bowed the knee to the Lord and Master. But hey, we had law and order. Yeah, law and their order.
But why would he be against Starmer? And where did he get this thing about Starmer should be facing charges? Like,
Well, he seems to be a bit of a racist because he had a real go at Starmer about the Pakistani gangs and Rotherham and all the rest of it.
hmm,
The grooming gangs. And
yeah,
the Tory party, by the way, were in government when all that happened, not Starmer. Starmer's the director of public prosecution,
that's right.
and
Yeah,
and and,
yeah.
and as well as they brought cases against the people where they had the evidence. And by the way, at the end, there was a big public inquiry. I don't know why the Tories are backing Musk's now and calling for an inquiry. There was an inquiry, which I think made about 7 or 8 major recommendations,
Yeah.
none of which the Tory party actually put into place. So
Mm,
I think it's a bit rich for them now saying, "Oh, Starmer should do this or Starmer should do that," when they didn't
mm.
do it themselves. But anyway, Jude, I can't answer the question. I think it's down to it's like Trump. Trump was supposed to be. He should have been able to live in his golden cage apartment up in whatever it is, Trump Towers.
Uh,
But what is it? It's power. Power is the biggest aphrodisiac of them all, Jude.
mm. And is that the reason you think why
Yeah, I
Musk?
think
I
so.
mean, before this, Musk had no connections I know of, particularly with Trump, apart from the fact that Trump tweeted all day and night. But I didn't think that Elon Musk and him were buddies. Now they're firm buddies. Uh,
But you see, what happened, Jude, was that the people who owned Twitter beforehand banned Trump because he said he was
yeah,
dangerous.
yeah, yeah,
The minute
yeah.
Trump, minute Musk took over, Trump was back on Twitter again, and he said he was a champion of free speech and democracy and all the rest of it. And Trump and him have a sort of a bromance.
Oh, jeez. I mean, it's getting sort of. I'm reading it, as I said to you, the plot against America. And honest to God, this, these sort of outrageous things you think will never happen are happening in this book in 1940. And it's exactly the same thing here. I mean,
Yeah.
sort of nuts. Nuts. This
So,
guy
Jude, but
who,
have you know the thing about the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire? They all started imploding when the lunatics took over, and Jude, that's what's happening. It's history repeating itself.
yeah, whom the gods wish to destroy, first they make
They
mad.
first make mad.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
let's hope that that's the case, especially the
yeah,
destroy bit, because
yeah.
she's a very powerful man, and if he hitches his wagon to Trump, and Trump is also a very powerful man, Jesus could do all sorts of things. It'll be very interesting and sort of scary to see what they come up with. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's leave them for the moment. Let's come down to humbler terms. And let's not talk about Musk and Trump, but let's talk about Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Now, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were two of the legs of the stool for government last time. The third leg of the stool was the Greens. Now, the Greens
Yeah.
got slaughtered in the election. And this seems to happen all the time. Whenever the small third party is, boom, they get kicked to
Mhm.
death.
Yeah.
And the Greens were very nearly totally kicked to death. They have a long, long way to come back. But Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, according to Irish Times, the word is that they're going to be doing a lot of road building that they otherwise
Mhm.
wouldn't have done because the Greens would have said, look, building roads is very bad for the ecology. What you should be doing is developing the railway network, which I agree
Yeah.
with, actually. I agree because if
Mhm.
you've got a really good rail network where you can get to it without bother and get to where you want to go to, you can sit on a
Mhm.
train. And if you're me or you, we could probably do it for nothing because of our age. It seems a no-brainer, but it does look as if Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are going to really get in there and win, I suppose, certain benefits, short-term benefits, regionally and nationally from people who like roads. And I suppose you might be
Yeah.
one of them, Pat, being a man from Donegal, because Donegal roads are shit.
No, Jude, you know, someone many years ago, there's a young German Greek girl came to this house, and she made the point, about Letterkenny. Letterkenny is probably the most gridlocked town in Ireland, and she made the point. This is a long time ago. It's a lot worse now. And she said a lot of those big lorries coming and delivering stuff. Dude, there's no rail work, a rail network into Donegal at all, and everything obviously is by road transport. Can you imagine, Jude, one train arriving in Letterkenny instead of 40 lorries each day? You know, it would solve a lot of the problems. Secondly, from an ecological point of view or an ecology point of view, jeepers, Jude, I'm just using Letterkenny, by the way,
Yeah.
it's repeated a whole lot of other towns. I
Mm.
go up to Letterkenny and there's maybe 10,000 cars, all, if you went all around the town, all expunging fumes into the air, and whatever else into the atmosphere. People sitting for 10, 15 minutes going nowhere. Look at the damage has been done to our economy. And one rail link would solve a hell of a lot of that. And it would take a lot of traffic off the road. But the
Mm.
other thing as well, Jude, Ireland has signed up to certain things under EU law. And no matter what way if they don't do them, carbon deals and all that sort of stuff, they're going to get very, very heavy fines. So
Mm.
whether the Greens are in power or not in power, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are going to have to find a way to implement a lot of the policies.
Yes, it's a really, it's the idea we most of us remember, at least I remember, and maybe you remember too, the time the railways were cut, and I've forgotten what the guy's
Yeah,
name was, the British minister,
Beaching,
Beeching,
Doctor.
was it
Yeah,
Lord Beeching? Uh,
yeah, he was. Yeah,
and
yeah.
he
Or
cut
he,
them, and
he
I
was
remember
originally Doctor Beaching and then became Lord Beaching, if I remember
the,
correctly.
the, those trains
Same
went
as you,
everywhere.
Jude. Doctor.
They were very good. Yeah, they were very good. They went, I mean, I remember coming home from St. Columns on to Oma on the train, and it was
Yeah,
marvelous. They stop off at Strabane and maybe other places like Sound Mills and so
mhm,
on. And
yeah,
they just made sense. And I went this morning, Pat. I spent this morning. This is the reason we're doing this afternoon rather than this morning. I went, drove my good wife to Craigavon. Now,
yeah,
Craigavon, although it may think well of itself, it is not the center of the universe. But
yeah,
by God, there's a lot of cars there. There's a lot of
yeah.
cars. We were circling round and round and round trying to find ourselves a parking spot. And this was in Craigavon.
Yeah.
Most people
But
don't
Jude,
know where Craigavon is.
I was in Derry half an hour ago, and if you get into Buncrana Road, which is the main sort of arterial
Artery.
route from Donegal, and you can you're queuing from away back from the city centre all the way in. It's ridiculous. And I used Letterkenny earlier on, but you can pick nearly any town in Ireland, north or south now. Our towns, dude, were developed from basically horses and carts.
Aye,
And like very few of them are planned. No, they're not like American towns, big wide main streets or main drags as they call them in
mhm,
America.
mhm,
Or,
mhm.
or like if you go down using Letterkenny again, or Milford, or Milton, or Maville, or any of those towns in Donegal, you'll find the main street is basically one lane up and one lane down.
Yeah, it's scandalous because as we know, the coffers of the South are bulging at present, right? They literally don't know what
Yeah.
to spend the money on. Now,
Mm.
if in Dublin, just to take Dublin as one example, I know they say Dublin's overloaded and so on, but there isn't a railway from Dublin Airport to the centre of Dublin. Now that is
Mm.
astonishing in what would consider itself a modern capital city, that they haven't got a
Uh,
railway line running to the airport, which is, I
yeah.
mean, it's bulging as well. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. Is it that they're in hock to the car owners or the insurance companies that insure the cars, or what is it?
But I have don't I get in trouble with certain people when I say this. I heard what do you call it? Stephen Collins, the Minister for Health, was on one day, and he lost his seat. He wasn't very popular, but he actually said someone that I agreed with.
The
He
Stephen
says, "Why am I getting
Collins,
it?"
was that his name?
And I what do you call it? The former Minister for Health. What's his name? Can't remember. doesn't matter. Stephen Collins is the Irish Times, isn't he? Well, it's what he
Aye,
calls
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Stephen Donnelly. Stephen Donnelly,
Donnelly.
sorry.
Yes. Okay.
Donnelly, sorry, I was going in the wrong
All
direction
right.
there.
I'm just
But
keeping you
anyway, Donnelly
out
said
of the
something I
quotes.
actually agreed with. He said, don't never agree with Stephen Collins. But
Yeah.
anyways, Donnelly said that why am I getting it in the neck? He says now for waiting lists and all the rest of it. He basically said I cannot magic up, huge hospitals now. This should have been planned for 10, 15 years ago. He said, but then here's, and I'm repeating something I think I've said before. Uh, Ireland's population for years was going down. This last 20 years, it's gone up. The war in Ukraine brought in a hell of a lot of people. And for 10 years or so before that, the EU, thanks to the EU laws, freedom of movement, we got a hell of a lot of Polish people. At one stage, I think we had 200,000 Polish people living in Ireland. Now, a lot of them gone back because Poland's economy's taken off like a rocket.
Hmm.
But anyway, the bottom line of it all was we had nearly an extra county. Like Donegal's got about 160,000 people. So if you imagine 200,000 Polish people, and there was Ukrainians and Latvians and various other people.
Hmm.
So like they suddenly come in, and we don't have the roads, we don't have the hospitals, we don't have the schools, we don't have the health system. We're already at the. So Donnelly said like a lot of this was totally not planned for,
Hmm.
and a lot of it was unexpected. And Jude, there's a certain element of truth in that.
I would agree there, definitely. And I must say that having like experience of Donegal roads, I'd sympathise with people if they clapped their hands if the government announced that they're going to build a decent road. Because when you drive down to by Galway or Mayo or even Cork, the roads are fabulous. So why the hell couldn't you
Absolutely, Jude.
draw? And people are dying every bloody day, it seems to me, on the roads of Donegal. Every second day, the news
Absolutely.
is telling me some other poor person was
Yeah.
hit by a car
Jude,
or
if you go down by Athlone, Mullingar, down there, there's one town, I think it's Mullingar. There's three motorways onto it. And I mean motorways, I don't mean sort of wee dual carriage. I mean real top of the range stuff. We drove myself and my dear missus were in Mullingar about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe six. And we said we'd gone down to Cork and Kerry down that.
yeah.
Dude, the roads down there were like airport runways.
Mm,
You know,
mm, mm,
superb.
mm, mm. Why? What have they got against Donegal? I mean, it pays for them to do these roads because people love them and say, "Oh, great! I can zoom from Cork to Kerry in no time." Why didn't they do the same thing for Donegal? How can they get away with it?
But see, Jude, here's the thing: partition. That was that question. Donegal is neither of the north nor of the south. That's a fact. It's forgotten by Belfast and forgotten by
Mm,
Dublin.
mm,
And Jude, let's get it clear too. Partition has had a terrible effect. It's blighted both Derry and Donegal. The lowest disposable income in Northern Ireland is in the Derry area. And the last count I heard, the lowest disposable income in the Republic is in the Donegal sort of Leitrim area.
mm,
Because it's far from the centre of power. We have no trains, so and transport's an issue. There's an airport down now, in fairness, in West Donegal, but Jesus, it's not exactly in the best location. If it
mm.
was outside Letterkenny somewhere, probably, but it's the way you like. It's if I wanted to go down to airport in Donegal, West Donegal, now it would
Yeah.
take me about an hour to get there. So it's not exactly centrally located, even in Donegal. But
Hmm.
anyway, that all that dude, it's done. And by the way, if you want health treatment, you're either going to Galway or Dublin.
That's right. And
It's like Donegal's become the Alaska of America type thing. We're the sort of Donegal. We're the Alaska of Ireland.
tell me this. You and I both know people that are working hard for the university, a university
Yes.
that would straddle the border.
Yeah.
Why don't the people of Derry, where the civil rights movement started, really, why aren't they out demonstrating and saying, look, we've got a city here in Derry and it's been run into the ground because no investment's gone into it. And as you said, huge new buildings for the University of Ulster or Ulster University in Belfast and
Yes.
damn
Yeah.
all
Three
for
hundred
Derry.
million. Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
aren't people organising and marching and saying that? Because I'll tell you something now, Pat. I don't think a lot of people know, or if they know, they don't care. But if it was made very clear to them that the people have got votes, or even people who are looking on and saying, is this fair that one part of our country should be getting this sort of in the neck? I think that would make a movement, but I think the protest and the anger is too subterranean. It's got to come out into the open.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm very suspicious about Sinn Féin. I think Sinn Féin and Derry. I'm open to correction, and somebody. I hope somebody does take offence at it.
Hmm.
But I think Belfast, Sinn
It
Féin in
will.
Belfast has told them to shut up. Don't because there was. Hey, you were a former lecturer at Jordanstown, weren't you?
Ah, well,
Why a lot
sorry.
of it doesn't matter, but a lot of stuff was transferred. There's no need for the 300 million development in Belfast. For no, there was no real clamour for it, but they suddenly
No,
went. There were far bigger need for development in Derry.
it was. You're absolutely right. It was actually the one that they had. There was problems with the location of it, about 8 miles from Belfast. But it was one of these green site universities that sprang up all over the place in the UK. So there was some things to be said for it, and more things to be said against it. But that doesn't mean that you then close the place virtually and throw everything into the centre of town. And I remember interviewing the vice chancellor of the University of Ulster and saying to him, where are you going to get the money for all these buildings? This is before they started. And he said, well, Jude, if you were building a house or you're getting a house built, well, how would you get the money? You'd take out a mortgage. And we did the same thing. What he
Yeah,
means is,
three
of
hundred
course,
million.
it's
Yeah,
the taxpayers' money that is actually going
yeah,
to build that. It's not him. It's not the staff of
yeah.
the university.
No.
It's maybe the partly the fees that are gouged out of the poor students, but it's not
Mm.
the staff or the vice chancellor that's going to suffer. And as you say, it's a very uneven distribution. Always has been. Okay, let's go to the
Mm.
last point, Pat, because we're running out of time here as usual because we're saying such wise things, and we just want to keep on saying wise things about the same thing. This is something I don't know if you've got views on this or not. My wife went to school in Mayo, and she was
Yeah,
taught Irish. Uh, Not just Irish, but she was taught several other subjects through Irish.
yeah.
And
I started off in St. Genesis then.
she has little or no time for Irish. I mean, she's not
Yeah.
intolerant of it, but she couldn't be bothered. Uh,
Mm.
Now it's a question of a guy has written this letter to the Irish Times, and he's responding to a couple of articles that have appeared about Irish and whether Irish should be a compulsory subject or not in second level throughout the South. And he says that there are some students who are from abroad, Ukrainian or whatever, immigrants, and that they're saying they're putting in for exemption because they're not essentially from Ireland originally. And they're getting these exemptions. And the guy who wrote the letter said to the Irish Times said, why doesn't somebody ask, are they studying any other language? Are they studying any other like Spanish or French or something? Because if they
Mm.
are, this argument that they wouldn't be fit for, they should be excused from learning Irish, falls flat in its face. It doesn't make sense.
No, 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 Jude, that's not comparing like with like. If I
I
go
think it
to
is, Pat. I think it
no,
is.
no, it's not, Jude.
Well,
No,
you
no.
explain
If
to
I
me.
go
I'm
to
listening. I'm all ears.
yeah, I'm like just sit and listen there, Doctor Tom. Right, if I go to national school in the
Yeah,
Republic of Ireland
yeah,
at age 4,
yeah,
and I stay there to 12, 13,
yeah,
I've got 7, 8 years of learning Irish,
yeah,
etc., etc. Right. If I come in from Ukraine and I'm 12 or 13 and I'm going into secondary school, I am entitled to an exemption. I'm trying to learn English. I'm trying to learn maybe Spanish or something. And I'm up against people who have already 8 years more experience of language than I have. The levels, in other words, I'm starting from scratch. They're halfway up, and they're going to get far better marks than I am going to get. And as well as that, Jude, I think learning one language. Let's be honest. Like while I have every sympathy for the Irish language, the everyday vernacular is English.
I agree with you completely, Pat. That's correct. But it doesn't mean, it doesn't invalidate the argument that I'm putting forward. If people can learn another language like Spanish or French, why can't they learn Irish? Uh, Languages aren't simple. I mean, are these people who are studying French and Spanish going to move to France or Spain immediately after they leave school? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not the majority of them, anyway.
It's not. I don't think that's the argument. I think the argument is it's not a level playing field. If you're coming in from the outside, like my kids grew up in Derry and so on, and where they weren't taught Irish,
Yeah, and they should have
And they
been. Yeah, they should have been. They
they
weren't.
weren't. Yeah, but
Yeah.
anyway, when years later, when they went south, what they called some of them, they're fairly late on, in fairness, but they got exemptions because they had no Irish
Ah,
background there,
that's
Irish.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they should be. You see, I think the problem is these guys are saying it's unfair to ask foreign students or students who are special needs to learn Irish. They should be exempted. That's nonsense. We don't say this is a kid with special needs, so we'll not teach him anything, or we'll not teach him maths because that's too hard, or we'll not teach him spelling because that's too hard for him or her. What rubbish! You teach for the student at the level they are, and you try to make progress with them as best you can, and that should apply to every student. And this notion that it's an imposition of some kind, I believe that the learning of Irish, it's your national language, and if you're not proud of that as part of your culture, you're nuts.
Yeah.
Because it's
Mm.
an absolutely glorious thing that gives you an insight into all sorts of stuff about place names and your history and the role of religion, the role of Britain, all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
the idea we'll ditch it. It just seems to be crazy. And for people to be making a case and saying, oh no, take it off, make it voluntary. And instead, do you know what they should be doing,
Yeah.
Pat? They should be
Yeah.
teaching Irish teachers to teach. They should
Aye.
be teaching
Jude.
Irish in a way that makes kids fluent and that's bloody well fun in a broad sense.
Yeah. Right. You start off by this discussion by reference your wife. She would have had very, very similar experiences, or sorry, I'll rephrase that. I would have had very similar experiences to her. I went to St. John's College and National School in Ireland, the Republic, and where Irish language was compulsory. Dude, it was rammed down your throat. In fact, if you failed Irish in your leaving cert, which by the
Hmm.
way determined whether you could get to university,
Mhm.
meant you could not go to
That's
university.
right. That's right.
So it had become like a millstone around your neck if you weren't good at Irish and didn't know the rest of it. Secondly, people from the Gaeltacht were given double points if they did everything through Irish.
Mhm.
So it was sort of like, oh, you're a special case because you were born in a place that you can speak Irish. And a lot of people resented that. In fact, a lot of people back in the day in the 50s and 60s left Ireland sort of what illiterate in two languages because of that compulsory
Yeah, 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 yeah.
whereas Jude, if they had maybe, as you said, had it made it important, made it fun, been taught how to teach people how to teach it properly, that might have been a different outcome.
Irish teaching for some odd reason. I think I've always believed it was because the people who were teaching it were terrified it was going to die out. They
Yeah,
battered at kids and say, you learn it. And I remember 6 years in St. Column, 5 years in St. Column. Jesus, it was the most miserable classes I went to. Uh,
yeah,
they were so concerned that it was going to lose, and they did the very thing that would knock anybody's interest in Irish out of them. They
yeah,
really
yeah.
should.
That's
The
exactly it.
government, if they really cared, would give special bloody grants for special units where they develop the skills of student teachers in the teaching of Irish. Use your brains. I go to voluntary Irish classes now, and while they're interesting and nice and so on, there's no more methodology worth a damn. Honest to God.
Yeah,
It's like the old thing the guy stands in front and he talks, and you answer and you write things down, and that's it. No wonder people
yeah,
don't respect their own language. And it's a
yeah,
terrible bloody shame. As
yeah.
Garrett O'Carrollon, who died recently, I don't know if you know him, Garrett
I know of
O'Carrollon,
them.
he
Uh,
died.
uh,
And I remember him saying at one point, he was on Radio Ulster, and he said, he asked me about Irish, he said, and why I don't want it to die out. He said, consider the whale. Don't have that much
yeah,
interaction with a whale, but by God, you'd be very upset if you thought it was going to die out. There was no more.
yeah.
The same thing applies to Irish. You may not use it every day, you might use it any day at all, but it's such a wonderful thing to let it die would be
You know
criminal.
that the thing. I think it's very. What is like? I'm not a fanatic, but I think it's a massive part of our culture, and it should be
Mm.
protected. Like, Jude, even someone like I, for years, thought Strand Millis was meant, one of the ultimate English names, Strand Millis.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
means the sweet stream.
Yes.
Strand Millish
Yeah.
is sweet,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah,
Doesn't that change the whole way you look at it?
yeah, yeah.
Wonderful,
It's
wonderful.
a totally Irish name.
Yeah. Okay, Pat, we're out of time.
All the best, Jude.
Wonderful
All
discussion. Mind yourself now.
Thank you.
Keep the
Bye,
hedge.
Jude.
Keep between the hedges.